Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Crapper. This week with the one and only Shaun Hall.
Good evening.
And myself, Tim Appleton, as per usual. Now, tonight we shall be doing, taking a look at Drama by Yes. Right. Now, the conversation that me and Shaun had the other day was about whether this is the last truly great prog album, at least of the classical period, right? And Shaun, you said of the Paleolithic prog period. So maybe it may not be. We'll get into that. But that was our sort of starting point. I'm going to do some empirifacts before we begin. So this is the 10th Yes studio album. Feels right, that, doesn't it? The 10th album comes out in 1980. It's sort of like rounding out the first period. As I say, it did come out in August 1980 on Atlantic. And it was recorded in various top London studios. Can't be bothered to go through them all. The guitars were recorded separately from the other tracks for some reason. But maybe we'll get into all of that as well. It was quite well received, this album, and it reached number 2 on the UK charts. Eddy Offord was somehow involved. Is that right? Is that the way of the best way of putting it? Because his name's on it, but only as having recorded the backing tracks, produced the backing tracks, and not the main tracks, right? How much do you know about that, Shaun?
Well, I heard that they brought him back, because obviously the previous album, Tomato, was Roy Thomas Baker, who had worked with Queen. So they'd kind of, the sessions for the new Yes album weren't going terribly well. So I don't know if anyone's heard any of the sort of material. I mean, there's a couple of tracks I've heard. One's In the Tower, the other one, The Golden Age, and it's still that sort of Tomato sound, that sort of folky medieval sound, in an age of punk. They'd probably have been crucified if they'd have put out that material. So anyway, they decided to bring Eddy Offord back, and I heard that Steve Howe eventually had to fire him because he'd got hold of a pigeon somehow from outside the studio and was busy plucking it and frying it in the studio. So this didn't go down well. I suppose Steve Howe's vegetarian, so this was like murder. Meat is murder to him.
Are pigeons macrobiotic?
I don't know. So that was. So I mean, he gets the credit, but they remember him very fondly, don't they, Eddy Offord? I mean, But must have been the last time they ever worked with him, I would have thought. But
I think it was, yeah. Yeah, he had a good run with them, didn't he?
He did, yeah, he did.
But it all sort of broke down at this point, I think. I mean the whole thing broke down, didn't it? You mentioned Tomato, and Tomato, I think, was originally going to be a double. Apparently, they had so much stuff material available. It does slightly make you wonder why they chose the material that they ultimately put on the album. Anyway, we'll do Tomato another day. But then they sort of put all that to one side, I think, and started to put together album 10 together. And then, as far as I understand the story, Wakeman and Anderson drank a bottle of Calvados and then left the band. I don't know what the causal connection is there, but that was the anecdote that I heard on that Yes documentary that we occasionally reference.
Rick was quite bored, I think, wasn't he? He was bored of the whole sort of proceedings, and he basically started throwing peanuts at Alan White's drum kit whenever he didn't like one of the songs, which was quite a lot, I think. So quite a few peanuts ended up showering Alan.
That actually leads to one of my... I've got a quote here. This is one of my favourite quotes on the album. Steve Howe recalls Wakeman frequently throwing peanuts at White's drum kit during takes of a song he was getting tired of, which, in addition to being very noisy and distracting through the other members' headphones, took considerable effort to clean up. So they wandered off, right? And then, wouldn't you know it, the Buggles came in to take over. Sort of the understudies in the understudy role. The Buggles were riding high at that point, I think, because they'd had this big hit with "Video Killed the Radio Star." Good song. Album's not quite so hot in my view, but anyway, great song, really, that. They had the same manager as Yes, didn't they? Brian Lane. So they were working out the same office, right? And apparently Brian Lane said to them, would you like to contribute a song to the new Yes album? I mean, what a weird line of questioning. And they said, actually, yeah, we have got one. And they had this song, Fly From Here, right, which they later on recorded. It was going to be like a longer piece. And they recorded it later on with Yes. Good song, actually. And they sort of, Chris Squire, they got in touch with Chris Squire, and he sort of, they played the song and he liked it. And he thought, let's start working on it. And then he sort of I think cryptically said, your voice is a bit like John Anderson's. Is there any chance you two would like to join the band? And they said, yeah, why not? Give it a go. The level of sort of, it's all a bit inexplicable, this, isn't it? But I think, I heard someone call them the other day Yeggles, like. As the portmanteau would be Yeggles. I thought bus might be a better portmanteau. But anyway, so yeah, they started to put this album together, and apparently they kept sort of waiting for John Anderson to turn up. Never turned up, right? And so they went ahead and they put this album together. So I think it's appropriate. It behooves me at this point, Shaun, to ask you what your general opinion is of this album. I'm on tenterhooks. Where do you stand on this one?
Well, I must admit, it's not one that I will automatically go to. But having said that, I think there is the nucleus of a good album here. And it's not just because Tomato was so bad. I mean, having said that, there are a few bright moments on Tomato, but they feel like a tired band at that.
Oh, hang on. I've lost your voice.
A reinvigorated Yes. Hopefully my internet is not going to disappear.
So your voice was edited out at that point, Shaun.
Yeah.
You want to repeat that point?
Sorry, I mean, it does sound like a reinvigorated Yes at this point, and it's a bit like they've had some. It's a bit like a grapevine, they've grafted on a sort of new wave element to the old sort of prog sound, and it's a much rockier sort of direction than the I've already alluded to sort of medieval folk of the sort of John Anderson era. So I think with some caveats, this is a strong album, and I think they were unlucky that possibly it could have gone further, but I don't think the fans really took to Trevor Horn, and I think that was probably the big thing. They just couldn't pass it off. But actually, on its own, it's an interesting album.
Yeah, I mean, apparently they didn't advertise that they'd replaced the singer and the keyboard player, the singer and main songwriter and the ultra famous keyboard player. So they just walked out on the stage with two other people. I can imagine if you're a fan, that must have been frustrating.
Yeah, that must have been it.
But yeah, I mean, I echo a lot of what you say there. I mean, I think I would go further. I think it's great, this album. I think it's something of a triumph against all the odds. It's got sort of hooky. It's quite hooky. but it's got interesting developments as well in the songs. I think everybody is like switched on here. You know, no one's phoning it in. You know, they're all really trying their best, aren't they? Actually, it made me think a little bit of Trick of the Tail by Genesis. You know that thing, you know, like Peter Gabriel leaves, and so they all have to really like focus, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you're right; they'd lost focus on Tomato, hadn't they? You know, and I think that in a way, it's sort of it almost feels like John Anderson had lost his way a little bit at this point. In terms of his songwriting, I mean, Going for the One was such an amazing record, and then Tomato, it seemed like he was having trouble sort of coming up with interesting ideas. I think I don't want to sound too negative about good old John Anderson, but it almost feels like they just replaced him, you know, and Rick with people with, you know, young guns, as it were, you know, with sort of fresh ideas. And as you said, it's sort of heavy. It's got a different feel to it, hasn't it? The compositional structures are slightly similar, but it's much heavier, much rockier, and it's also got this slight new wave element. But it's almost like they're searching for a new direction. And I agree with you. I think it's a shame they didn't sort of develop it further, really. And yeah, I like Trevor Horn. You know, I mean, in a way, it's, as I say, it's a tribute to how Squire and White, isn't it? Their resilience, this record, but also, you know, the sort of musical imagination of Horn and Downes. You know, I think he does a good job as a singer, and they've got plenty of good ideas. You know, don't have much an opinion about Jeff Downes technically as a keyboard player. You know, I mean, presumably he's not virtuosic like Rick Wakeman was, but I'm not sure that matters at this point, because they're going for something a bit different, aren't they? And I do like his keyboard arrangements a lot. So yeah, we're pretty positive on this one then. That's the crapper consensus. And let's have a quick word on the cover, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Have you got much to say about this?
Well, it's Roger Dean's back, and it's not. I wouldn't say this is particularly. You know, it's quite a different. It's a bit more graphic, I think. I'd describe this album cover. But the Yes logo is back, and Roger Dean's back. Now, whether this is true or not, but there's meant to be on the cover. There's meant to be a depiction of a shipwreck on the upper right edge, and there's 3 black panthers chasing down 2 white birds. Now, this is meant to represent. How Squire and White, the 3 black panthers, running free from the shipwreck of Yes,
Tomato.
But it does look like apparently the two white birds are the new members, but it does look like the 3 black panthers are sort of trying to catch them or eat them or something. I don't know, but apparently that's the meaning of the cover, which I had absolutely no idea of. You know, there's an iceberg. Well, I thought it was a mountain, but you know, the Yes Tomato cruise liner has foundered on the iceberg. So there you go. Read into that what you will.
I mean, I actually thought. I wondered whether he had heard some of the music, whether he heard the music and then drew the cover, because there's it coincides. Some of the imagery seems to coincide with Tempus Fugit, the lyrics of Tempus Fugit. I don't know if you noticed that. They talk about. I've got it here actually. He talks about leopards freaking at the sight of a mind closed beside herself. I don't know what any of that means. It's not even grammatical, is it? Born in the night, she would run. And the nearer I came, how the country would change. She was using the landscape to hide herself.
Yeah,
you know, it's got. I just thought that because I mean leopards. There's
a fine line between a leopard and a panther.
It is, yeah, that's right. Yeah, a fine line between clever and stupid. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I thought that maybe because panthers apparently, I mean, don't exist, right? They're just. Not biologically speaking, they don't exist. So I thought maybe they were actually leopards, but just black leopards or something. I don't know. All right, good. Well, great. That's great. So let's now go into the tracks. Now we'll start with this is a classic sort of structure, isn't it? This album, long prog track, interlude, long prog track, rocky prog track, and then same on side 2. So it's got that sort of Yes album. I mean, they're really kind of like trying to do something new on this album, but they're also sticking to the some key Yes signifiers, aren't they? I think. And I think I like that sort of format for an album. In a Glass House by Gentle Giant has that same structure as well. So we're going to start actually with the longest track on the album, and it's a bit of an epic, which is Machine Messiah, right? Now, what are your thoughts on this one, Shaun?
I think this is a quite a bold statement. It's slightly heavier. It opens with that guitar work from Steve Howe, and it's almost Chris Welch said it's unexpectedly heavy metal sounding. So I thought of Led Zeppelin actually. It's quite it's quite a statement. I think Tony Kaye at times sounds like previous Yes keyboardist, but on this track I think sometimes he sounds a bit like Tony Kaye because he uses that sort of organ.
Hang on, you mean Jeff Downes?
Sorry, Jeff Downes.
Jeff Downes sounds like Tony Kaye.
Yeah,
Tony Kaye sounds like Tony Kaye.
Tony Kaye sounds
definitely does. Yeah.
So I think Jeff Downes sounds a bit like, that's a Freudian slip, isn't it? Yeah. Jeff Downes sounds like Tony Kaye at times. He uses a sort of a section of organ music, doesn't he? It's God, what is it?
I don't know it actually.
Yeah, Charles Marie Wider Symphony for Organ. So apparently he liked that as a child and threw it in. But I think there's the vocals work very well. I think when Squire and Horn. I was going to say Howe. Squire Horn. I'm having a good night. Squire and Horn sort of work together, and you almost can't tell that it's not John Anderson. So I think to the casual Yes fan, you probably wouldn't notice. Roger Dean said this was his favourite track. So as you'd said earlier, I think he had been listening to this album.
Right.
And there's great performances on this track from everyone really. I mean, I don't think Alan White, I don't think has sounded better really. He comes off really well on this album. And I think they've recorded him really well, and that's down to Hugh Padgham, I think, with he'd been working with Peter Gabriel, I think, hadn't he, and Phil Collins. So he's got that sort of gated drum sound, and it really does suit Alan White. I mean, compared to say Tomato, the sort of sound he's getting on this album. And Chris Squire, I mean, his bass work is excellent on this track. So this is a great track and a real, a sort of siren call for Yes in the 80s. I think it's really sort of reinvigorating. So I really like this, and it's a very sort of proggy track, very sort of it's sectional, and it's brilliant. I really like this.
Yeah, well, I'll take up the baton there then. I've also written brilliant here in my notes. I love this track. I think this is some of the most complex music Yes ever wrote, actually. I'm not saying that's... I know that they did larger scale stuff, because this is relatively small scale in terms of like length and everything. But the way that they write it, is incredibly sophisticated, I think. I think this is where they get closest to classical music on this one. In the sense that like the overall structure is more important than the individual ideas, right? I mean, that sounds bad if I say it like that. But what I mean is, in a way, it takes the sophistication up a level, right? So, for example, that opening guitar part, what's it go? That well, I can't even remember the tune, but yeah, it's. I remember when I got this, I got an LP copy of this at college, and I played it, and I, bought it obviously and played it, and I thought, I don't like this, just, and I took it off, and I don't think I went back to it for a while. I was so put off by that opening guitar part, so. I had to really grow into this album. And actually, I sort of came back to it thanks to you, because you said one day, do you like drama? Because I think it's really good. I thought, well, I've never really bothered with it, because that opening guitar lick kind of put me off. It always reminded me slightly of Young Mother in Style, is it called, by Curved Air? Yeah, it has a similar opening. But I just thought it wasn't very interesting, that opening. But then I realised later on, when I came back to the album, what structural role that introduction plays. It's actually the sort of like the rhythmic basis of the whole track. And it's, when you think of it like that, again, it's the sort of classical thing. You start to see it in context and you think, oh, actually this is really clever, And I think that I sort of think that this is like listening to Beethoven in a way. Not just this track actually, but some of the other longer tracks on the album. It's like they go through every possible ramification of the musical motifs, trying to get as much excitement out of each of them as they possibly can. Then they move on, then they finish and move on to the next track, basically. In fact, the arrangement here is so sophisticated that I think at some points it's close to getting away from them. I don't know if you noticed it, but there's a couple of drum fills in the middle, and they go out of sync with each other. And I thought, this is too much. They're so. Such good musicians, and the arrangements are so complicated, but it's too complicated even for them. Yeah. I think that there's, having said all that about the structural stuff, you do need some basic elements, I suppose. And I think I counted 3 in this song: the Steve Howe guitar introduction, plus all the variations. Then you've got the song, right, which I presume is by Horn Downs, right? We're gonna have trouble with surnames tonight, aren't we? And then the third bit is the main sort of like standalone section, is the quiet bit in the middle, which I found sort of reminiscent of Roundabout a bit. That bit, Machine Messiah, that bit, when it completely breaks down, it reminds me of In and Around the Lake in Roundabout, that bit.
Yeah.
And so they seem to move back and forth between the first 2 elements, and then the third sort of constitutes an interlude, basically, although they do use it as a coda as well. By the way, that interlude sort of reminded me, funnily enough, of Welcome to the Pleasure Dome by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, which came out a few years afterwards, and it's got Steve Howe presumably playing the same guitar, and he's got exactly the same sound, right, as that interlude there. So that's a weird sort of cross reference. But yeah, I just think it's just so beautifully written. Everything's in its place, but it's so imaginative, the writing. I find it completely aesthetically satisfying, this track. To be honest, Shaun, I'm going to say that about most of these tracks, because I basically love all of these tracks. I don't think it's got a duff track on it, this album. But we'll see what your take is. All right, good. I mean, that's all I've got on that. What about Man in a White Car?
I see now. This is a good album, but I think I mentioned earlier with caveats.
Right.
Myself.
And this is your caveat, is it?
I'm not bothered about. Right. I don't know why. It's it's a Trevor Horn song, I guess. I just think it's a bit, I suppose after all the excitement of that opening track, this is a bit of downtime, and at least it's over quickly for me. But I find it just a bit of a nothing song. It's supposed to be written about Trevor Horn seeing Gary Newman in his Stingray. That's his car, a Corvette Stingray. But right. I don't really care, to be honest. I couldn't care less who it was. It could have been Mr. Bean in his Mini. So it's a bit of a nothingy song. Jeff Downes has got, I noticed he's got a sort of a Tony Banks, he's a bit Banksian, actually. I think Jeff Downes is quite a good imitator, actually. Sounds a bit Banksian, I think, sort of circa Wind and Wuthering, and then there were 3, that sort of keyboardy sound. I don't know, it's not very yes for me, this track, and it could have been a B side. don't really know why it's on the album. So I don't have a lot. I just wrote a pointless track, so
Good,
I'm not
good.
so keen on
So that's that one.
it.
Do you think? So it's called Man in a White Car. Do you think it was originally called New Man in a White Car?
Maybe, maybe, yeah.
But they had to edit it down because I
Mm,
thought it was too direct
mm,
a reference. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I've got nice interlude, works perfectly. Doesn't have to do anything special.
Right.
It's just a mood, to
Yeah,
break
a
up the
mood
tracks that's around it.
piece. Yeah.
But even so, I do have to say I do like the. I think it's got a beautiful little musical development in it. Da 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 da. Da, 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 da. That bit, the sort of the ending of the line, I think is
Mm,
really nice. I take your point now. I think it's probably doesn't have. It's not like a Yes song. This one, is it?
mm.
But I think
No.
it's Yesy in the sense that it's a program, sort of a programmatic part of the album. So they're thinking beyond one track. This classic debate that we keep having about whether something's a concept album or not. To what extent are the themes sort of running over more than one track, and the programming is like that of a concept album. But anyway, all right, good. Let's go on to track 3 then. Does It Really Happen? Nice title. Where do you stand on it? This was the one that they opened their live set with, by the way. I think it's actually a very good
Right.
choice for that because
Hmm.
it's quite exciting, this one. But what are
Yeah.
your feelings on this one?
Well, this I do like this. It's all back to the good stuff. I think it dates back a way, doesn't it? I think there's some rehearsals with Patrick Moraz doing this. Not that I've heard them. Um,
Oh, right. Didn't know that.
apparently, excuse me,
Hmm.
cough, cough. Um, there's there's a great sort of bass riff on this, and then there is again a sort of slightly Gary Newman-esque synth. So the new wave and the old wave, I guess. Squire's, I really like Squire's vocals. I think I'll just come off the fence and say, why couldn't he just sing? He could have done it. I just sort of like the way he sort of phrases things. It's quite unusual, but I don't know whether he just didn't have confidence in himself, or he was just happy sort of at the side of the stage. But I think he's great. And again, there's a little bit more. There's sort of a slightly Tony K-esque organ section in there. I think this is a great track. I like the sort of the breakdown in the middle. Where it says where you get the vocal line, you walk away, you take the path. And again, Chris Squire sings that quite sort of I don't know how you'd call it. It's sort of punctuating. I think again is a sort of a sectional proggy track. I think it's a bit more Yes-like for me. So I really like this. I mean, basically, there's only 3 tracks, aren't there, on side 1?
Mm,
So
mm,
Man in a White Car is sort of
mm.
it's like a relish in between 2 slices of, I don't know, bologna. No,
Yeah.
not
Oh,
bologna.
was it like?
Um,
Did we have this conversation before about the bit of ginger that they give you in a Japanese restaurant to clean your palate before you go
oh
into
yeah,
yeah
yeah, yeah.
before you move on to the sushi
Very good.
course or whatever it is.
Mm.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, you've taken the words out of my mouth a little bit there. I mean, I think he could have been the singer, couldn't he, Chris Squire?
Mm.
I always think that he could have made a good singer because he's the tallest one, so he could have been in the middle of the stage. He would have
Yeah.
visually would have worked better. And in fact,
Mm.
you'll note that if you ever see like clips of them doing this live, Trevor Horn's on a little platform in the middle. And actually, I think that was a hangover from the John Anderson era.
Yeah.
So, but I think you're right. He does a really good. I mean, he's singing this one, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
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 And I think this is I mean I agree with you. I love this track. I think it's terribly exciting, this track. It's the second track after Machine Messiah with really interesting chordal developments. Particularly, I think that the pre-verse bit, da 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 da. It's a sort of, I don't know what they're doing there. It's a sort of dissonant chord or something, and it's like a variation of the verse chords. but done with very weird sort of note combinations. So, and I think that kind of thing's really interesting. Like that they came up with that. I suspect that was Jeff Downes. And it speaks well of him that he was doing things like that. I think. What I was going to say about this track. One of the things I really like about this track is that for most of this track, okay, wait for it. Here's my theory. There seem to be two things going on at once, right? So, for example, you have those sort of like James Bond type chords with the ascending fifth. That although this is in a major key and James Bond is in a minor key, but they do have the ascending fifth sequence, and that keeps sort of recurring over the bass and keyboard riffs which are underneath, right? So there's it's sort of like there's always two things going on at once, and the verse seems to be more like concerted, like, excuse the pun, but you do get the keyboard arpeggios over the top, which again seem to sort of split the line into two things, and then in the chorus, they all seem to be playing in unison, but actually the drums are playing in straight 4 time, and everyone else is doing a really weird set of meters. Like I tried to work it out. I put 6 6 5 5. I think those are the bar lengths by my calculations. 6 6 5 and 5. But Alan White's playing 4, and it's not like a Ringo 4, like he doesn't know what's going on. It's like they've actually counted it out, So my theory here is that this represents the theme, like, because the whole song is about, does it really happen? So there's like, is something happening or not happening? Two things happening at once. So they say like, time is the measure before it's begun, slips away like running water. So you've got this idea of like, what's the nature of time? And then it says in time to move together, except that they're not, of course. So I think that's really clever.
Yeah, it is.
But anyway, I suppose these are sort of unconscious things that you get when you're listening to music. But I do wonder how intentional it was. Whether they had sort of like worked that out programmatically. I must admit,
I was trying to work out what was going on with the drums. I was thinking, there's something afoot here, but I couldn't work it out.
That's right. There's something afoot with Alan White's foot. All right, good. Let's go on to side 2 then. We're sticking with our LP format structure. Into the Lens. Now, this is the second long track, isn't it? And so, where do you stand? Do you like this one?
It's okay. I'm not quite as big a fan of this as the other 2 tracks on side 1.
You can speak freely. It's all right.
I think this is a Horn down song, and Squire really liked it, so he's rearranged it, and you can kind of hear the bits that he's arranged, because they're obviously more yes-like. There's use of a vocoder, so Cher fans, you might like that if there are any Cher fans listening in Peru this evening. The intro's interesting, and that's very sort of yes-like. Do you know the problem I think I have with this track, and it is called Into the Lens, is the "I am a camera" lyric. I just think it's daft. There's a Steve Howe tick tock riff, and then he says, "I am a camera." What? I mean, what's that? What's that about? So I'm bemused by that. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
That's fair enough. It's a nice bit of is it called assonance though? I am a camera. That's quite clever, don't you think? It's perfectly meaningless, but
yeah. But he isn't a camera, is he? Unless he's
well, that's a good point, Shaun.
Unless he's got a mental illness and thinks he's an inanimate object. Anyhow, it could be about that. There's what I sort of call the yes parts are very interesting. There's some Steve Howe slide guitar, which is really good, sort of going for the one-esque over a sort of a staccato arrangement, and I like that. It's just, I don't know, I just don't understand what the song's about personally, so it's a bit half-baked, this one.
Right, fair enough. I think that's okay. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I read Trevor Horn said that he thought that the the Buggles, because the Buggles re-recorded this, the second Buggles album, which didn't do any business, but I think it was probably a contractual obligation album, to quote Monty Python. But I think that he said that the Buggles version was better. He thought the Yes version went on too long, but I think actually the Yes version's better. I disagree with the universal genius of that is Trevor Horn. I think that as I said, this is the second sort of really long track on the album. I think that, like the first one, Machine Messiah, the arrangement sort of overtakes the elements really. It's a series of short themes that are kind of varied throughout the band, for all that they're worth really. And I think the final result is quite beautiful, but it's as you say, I think it requires Yes to be there. I think I Am a Camera is an all right line. I know what you mean. It's a bit sort of circumstantial, isn't it? Although I do like the ass notes. But I do really like the way that they develop it. Again, it's sort of classical. It's like theme and variation. So they do the I Am a Camera, and then they do da 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 da, that sort of, and they use slightly nice jazzy chord, seventh chord. There's a seventh chord in there. And then there's a really exciting variation of the variation as it builds up. He goes, I am a camera. So he's doing a first inversion of A and then C. And I think that's, I find that quite bracing, that bit, I have to say. Do you not take to Jeff Downes' camera imitations then? I thought they were all right. I mean,
the vocoder.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to do it. Steve Howe does it as well, doesn't it? He doesn't acquit himself. But Downes does it with the vocoder. But I suppose there's sort of
with a plum.
He does it with a plum. And also he does the Here by the Waterside line. He does an impression of water droplets. That I think that's quite nice. I'm a sucker for those little musical, that kind of musical scene setting. But yeah, I think you're right. I don't know. I agree with you. I don't know what the hell the lyrics are about. I think it's a love song, right? He was about to get married, wasn't he, Trevor Horn? And in fact, did you read that they were so busy with this album that he had to get married in 2 hours in a 2-hour slot and then rush back to the studio? That's the story I read. And his quote on this is great. I've got it written here. We decided that for our honeymoon, we were going to spend 2 weeks in Miami Beach. It ended up as 3 days in Bournemouth, and Steve Howe came along.
My God.
Imagine going on your honeymoon with Steve Howe. Anyway, unless you're Steve Howe's wife, obviously. But yeah, so I think it's sort of about... The song, I guess, is about what it means to remember something, to remember and maintain a feeling, like a feeling of love, and I think it's all right, I think that works okay for me. The arrangement sometimes reminds me of The Ancient from Tales from Topographic Oceans. It's very percussive. Alan White's very present on it, isn't he? And so I got a little, talking about remembering things, I got a little memory of, topographic there. All right, good. Okay. Let's move on to Run Through the Light. Any views on this?
I'm not especially a fan of this track. I've just written a weak track. I don't like the line he sings where he's I'll do an impression of it. I asked my love to give me shelter. I just can't stand that. I can't stand the phrasing of it. I've no idea what this is about again. But I can tell you that unusually, I think Chris Squire's playing a sort of a fretless jazz bass on this, because it's got that sort of fuzzy sound that was so prevalent later in the 80s. If you think of anything, like Paul Young, for example, you think of any of the songs he did, and that sort of that sound of bass guitar. Tony Levin, I think, is another exponent. So it's unusual to hear that from Chris Squire. And Steve Howe, I think, does pull off another good solo set against a sort of a new wave synth from Jeff Downes. So, I think they make something of it, but it's not anything that particularly stands out for me. So that's all I have to say, I'm afraid.
Fair enough. Yes, I mean, I think again, it's difficult for me to be offended by this track because it's an interlude, another interlude track, I think, or at least maybe I feel like it's more of an interlude than it actually is because the second track on side one is such an interlude, obvious interlude track, and I just kind of I make that association in my mind. So I think you're right. They are trying to do something a little bit more ambitious here. I think it's all right. It's a sort of it's a new wave mashup. This, isn't it? Probably more on the new wave side. This, but I think it's not a bad song. And I think the arrangement is nice. It goes from minor to major key in the middle. That's the sort of the Yes touch. I think that's the guitar solo you were talking about, and I think that's quite successful. But again, it's so short this that it doesn't have long enough to offend me too much. And I'm kind of like eagerly anticipating what's coming afterwards, which is what happens. Once you start to know an album, you like the track that comes afterwards, and then you can just sit and wait for it, basically. How bad would an interlude track have to be for it to actually, interrupt the flow of the album? Speaking of which, shall we go to the final track, Tempus Fugit? Yes. Can I make the obvious comment before we begin this one? Go for it. This is fast, this song, which is what the theme is about. The evanescence of experience. I mean, that's what it's about, isn't it? Time flies, so playing fast.
Time flies when you're having fun, or it might feel really slow if you're listening to this. But yeah, for me, this is back. Sorry, I'm going to dive in here.
Go for it.
I think I think this is great again. So you've got a sort of a Tony Kaye rip back. So we got that sort of organ sound, and the riff really sort of grabs you. It's sort of slightly, I don't know, slightly Police-like, perhaps, and we've got the vocoder back, with that sort of yes sort of sound. Steve Howe said that this is meant to allude to Chris Squire always arriving late for rehearsals. So that must have been a sort of running saw. But there's great guitar work on this. It's got a really sort of driving rhythm. I think Alan White is pretty good on this album. Well, pretty good. He's brilliant on this album, and you couldn't. He cemented his drum stool in place with Yes, and you couldn't sort of, I don't know, you couldn't sort of imagine it with Bill, could you? With Bill Bruford? Well, he wouldn't do it, would he? He wouldn't want to do it. Wouldn't be interested. But this is where Alan White sort of comes into his own, and I think he does a great job on it. I think the vocals work really well again. In sort of conjunction with Chris Squire and Trevor Horn. I think actually Jeff Downes sounds a bit like Pat Moraz at times on this track. I mean, sort of towards the middle to the sort of back end of the track, some of the sort of keyboard tones and textures. And I think this is brilliant. It's a really exciting track. Again, it's a sort of proggy track. So on the whole, this ends the album really well. So I do think there's some really, really strong stuff on this album, and this is one of the highlights of the album, I think.
Yeah, goodbye album, goodbye drama, goodbye Yes. I don't know. Yeah, it's I agree with you. It's an appropriate closer, isn't it? It's very upbeat and exciting. It's this sort of, again, we were talking about the synthesis between like the new wave thing and the sort of songy new wave thing and the Yes more complex Yes arrangements. This is more on the Yesy side, I think. Epic Squire bass riff, I mean, apparently the rumor was that this one was actually put together by Howe, Squire, and White, right before the others came in. So it sort of shows at some points what they could do as a three-piece. And they have this capacity to write interesting arrangements, as I say, but they also do need, I think, this sort of vocal, song-orientated input, which they used to get from John Anderson. And I think Trevor Horn does a pretty good job of providing it, I think, as this track shows. It's I like the sort of rhythmic developments of the vocal lines. I think they're really, really exciting, almost sort of operatic, actually. And I must admit, I can't not reference the lyrics when they say "answer to yes." So there's this sort of self-reference here. So it's kind of like it's I suppose like a reference to the fact that what's going on in the band at that time, with them taking over, but the new members. But I think that the way I think of that is really that it means it's a love song. I mean, there's a lot of love songs on here, and Trevor Horn was famously in love with his wife, who was also his business partner and manager, I think. And I like this sort of iteration of the word yes. I think it's like it's sort of saying yes to love, isn't it, really? And that's the way I've always thought about, the name of the band, Yes. I've always thought of them as a very sort of positive band. Although this is in the minor key, this track. But I don't know. I just like that resonance. And yeah, I just love it. I think it's when it finishes, I sort of feel like I want to put the album on again, But unfortunately, then I have to sit through all the bonus tracks on the deluxe edition that were never supposed to go on the album in the first place, and they're almost universally awful. But that's modern record company business practice for you. All right, good. Well, so I don't know I suppose we'll leave it there, shall we? I don't know if we've answered the question as to whether this is the last great prog album. What do you think of that idea? Do you think that's overstated?
Well, I think I don't know. I mean, there's definitely a strong prog element on this album, and as you say, I mean, after this it was Circa, and then it was 90125.
Mm-hmm.
So they were in a state of flux, but there are some strong proggy tracks on this, but it's it's bleeding into the sort of new wave scene. I mean, it'd be interesting to see had this lineup stayed around a bit longer, where they would have gone. Would sort of the poppy Trevor Horn sort of side dominated a bit more? Was there anything else left in the tank, so to speak, from Howe and Squire and White? I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's a mixed album for me. I mean, it's probably a 7 out of 10. It's a lot better than Tomato, that's for sure. And I think I prefer it to pretty much anything that came after it. Really, I'm not terribly big on 80s Yes, but it's a shame in a way. They couldn't have developed this sound a little bit more and seen what they were capable of. But yeah, I don't know whether that's answered your question.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Fully, thank you. No, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I thought that as well. Would have been interesting to see how this lineup developed. Actually, I mean, they perhaps would have developed this Fly From Here thing, which they did in the end, actually. But like 30 years later or something, because that is a really good track, actually, Fly From Here. And you sort of wonder why they didn't incorporate it in this set. But I mean, probably obviously there wasn't space for it. But yeah, I think it could have. It's a sort of. It's not so much a branch, this on a rock family tree, but a twig, isn't it? But it could have been a branch, perhaps. Anyway, all right. Well, lovely. Thanks very much, Shaun, and
Welcome.
we'll see you on the next episode. One or both of us, or neither of us. We'll see you on the next episode of Crapper. So goodbye, Shaun.
Ta-da.
And it's goodbye from me, and we'll see you next week or whenever it is. And thanks for listening.